In this segment, we will examine probably the most well-known consequence of the French and Indian War: taxation without representation. The war, fought largely in North America, had been a costly endeavor for Britain. It left the British government deeply in debt. Parliament believed the colonists, who had benefited from British military protection during the war, should share the financial burden. American colonists fiercely contested parliamentary attempts to tax them. This opposition stemmed from John Locke's concept of the social contract, a theory that heavily influenced the colonists' political thinking. According to Locke, government exists to protect individual rights, particularly property. People give up some liberties like complete control over their possessions in exchange for the government's protection of the rest. This consent is crucial. The government's legitimacy hinges on its ability to safeguard its citizens' lives and property. The colonists readily paid taxes levied by their own colonial assemblies. However, they saw parliamentary taxation as fundamentally different. Since they lacked representation in Parliament, they argued they had no say in how these taxes were levied or spent. In their view, this violated the social contract. The colonists weren't simply against taxation. The lack of representation was the key issue. Without a voice in Parliament, they felt their consent was being bypassed. This, they argued, transformed taxation into theft. The government entrusted with protecting their property was instead taking it without their consent. Locke further argued that when a government violates the social contract by abusing its power, the people have a right to revolt. The colonists, viewing parliamentary taxation as a violation of their natural liberties, used Locke's philosophy to justify their growing resistance. This ideological foundation provided a powerful justification for the American Revolution. Americans in Parliament fundamentally disagreed on the structure of the British Empire. Colonists envisioned a system where the king oversaw separate legislative bodies, each representing distinct territories. Massachusetts had its own assembly, Pennsylvania had theirs, and so on. Colonists believed only their locally elected assemblies could rightfully levy taxes on them. To them, parliamentary taxation equaled taxation without representation. The British view differed significantly. They saw Parliament, under the king's authority, as the supreme ruling body of the entire empire. Therefore, Parliament acted for the benefit of every British subject, whether directly represented or not. This concept, known as implicit or virtual representation, asserted that even without colonists in Parliament, their interests were protected. Understandably, Americans rejected this argument. Implicit representation failed to acknowledge the lack of their direct voice within Parliament. Decades of self-governance during the era of salutary neglect further fueled their resentment. Colonists deeply believed that only through elected officials could they truly consent to taxation. The British insistence on virtual representation, therefore, became a symbol of tyranny in their eyes. Hence the slogan, "Taxation without representation is tyranny." Please proceed to answer the questions in the assignment on Canvas. If you have any questions, you can post them in the open forum discussion or contact the professor using Canvas email.